Your top 3 scorers in PPR going into Sunday night: Leonard Fournette, Austin Eckler, and what do you think? Who's tied?
Taysom Hill.
Taysom Hill. The Vulture. From this moment forward, he'll be known as the Vulture.
No.
You don't like it? I like it.
No, that's not what this was. Like there's been some vulturing going on early in the season. He was the Vulture. He was the MVP today. He was the best player on the field. He won the game for the Saints.
Most vulturing player, the MVP.
They lost,
I love it.
But he would have won the game for them if they would have won.
At this point, isn't everybody else on the
They
Saints offense vulturing him?
I don't know, but yeah, he didn't really vulture today, but he vultured in the sense that we wanted everyone to score fantasy points, at least I did, except for Taysom Hill, and he kept
started Taysom Hill. Right, Dave?
I think I did in one league. He's on the bench in another.
Well, way to go, Dave. Welcome to the show. It's Sunday.
I recommended him on FFT this morning, and every single time we talked about what do you do without Kyle Pitts, it was the first name out of my mouth. So that was a big plus.
He had more carries in this game than he had the whole season coming into this game.
It made sense. They were playing Seattle. Seattle can't stop anybody. It made perfect sense that it would be this way.
Well, listen, we got 2 games left on the slate. So far, 9 out of 14 games in week 5 have been decided by 1 score. It's been a really fun day of football, and we're excited to talk about it with you here. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and click that like button. We'd really appreciate it. I just hit like. We're up to 10. All right. And let's start with the biggest winner of Fantasy Week 5. Dave, who's our biggest winner?
The biggest winner from Fantasy Week 5. You mean Taysom Hill doesn't count as a big winner from Week 5?
Whatever you want, man. It could be
him.
Do
you think his role changed, and this is what his role is now? 9 carries
a
game?
No, I don't think that. If we're gonna go the traditional winner loser route, let's go with Ramondre Stevenson, who took over for Damian Harris. Harris got hurt early in the game. He played 100% of the snaps for the Patriots against the Lions, and he looked good. You know what I want to look up? I'm going to need a little bit of time. I want to know how many yards after contact he had, because he was bouncing off guys and he was breaking dudes' ankles. He was doing it on carries. I think he caught a couple of balls in the game.
He did. So, he caught a couple.
Yeah, 2 for 14. I thought he looked amazing. Now, he had always looked good, but it's like he knew that this was his opportunity to get just a ton of work and to do well and prove that he could be the main guy. And I think he proved it. I think he's going to be he's obviously a must start for however long Damian Harris is out, but he may have earned himself a big time role even when Harris comes back.
He had a 49-yard carry. I am almost positive that is a career long for Ramondre Stevenson. And he was, yes, absolutely outstanding today. Ramondre Stevenson, how many PPR fantasy points? 19 PPR fantasy points because he did not score, but 161 rushing yards, 14 receiving yards. And Dave is looking it up. Heath, you want to sing it with me? The quicker, slicker, looker, upper, Davey. All right, thanks, Heath. Thanks for leaving me hanging out there. Who's the biggest loser, Heath, other than me for singing?
I think it has to be James Robinson. This feels like Doug Peterson pulled one of the biggest fool Jews over the first 2 weeks of the season with their usage. And last week we saw they were tied in carries, and it was almost like the wind horse meme. What's going on in Jacksonville? And then today they were tied in carries, only Travis Etienne was like so much more productive than James Robinson on those carries. Etienne had 5 targets to Robinson's 2, and it was the dream matchup against the Houston Texans, the worst run defense in the league. And James Robinson averages 2.7 yards per carry.
Yeah, really bad. The whole Jaguars offense. I mean, Christian Kirk and Lawrence and Robinson were terrible, but Etienne did have a good game. So what does that mean going forward? Who's the best running back? Who's the better running back for Jacksonville, Heath?
Well, believe it or not, Travis Etienne is the best running back for Jacksonville rest of season.
I don't believe it. I think that he's definitely coming around, and it's going to make it harder to feel great about starting James Robinson, but I think Robinson can still put together some good plays, still be the better rusher, pure rusher for that offense. And I feel like Etienne could turn the ball over a bunch. He had a couple of close calls today. He might have even turned it over once. I don't have the stat.
He got hit and he fumbled. I think they may have overturned it.
Yeah.
Crushed.
Yep. No, I mean,
overturn
listen, he's fast. The
it
Jaguars
wasn't a
are
fumble.
smart. The Jaguars are smart for trying to find ways to get him the ball, and 100 total yards is pretty great.
Yeah, well, it was definitely his best game for Etienne. I mean, this was an efficient game for him. He hadn't really had I don't think he had a lot of those, really.
No, I've got your numbers on Ramondre, by the way.
Go ahead.
161 yards on the ground. 111 of them came after contact.
Very impressive. I got two more losers for you. Kyler Murray for sliding before the first down and then spiking it on 3rd and 1 to set up the game-losing field goal attempt. Yeah. And that terrible roughing the passer penalty.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh,
it was a sack.
It was such a sack. Somebody told me, I don't know if you saw this, somebody said there was a clear pass interference that wasn't called on the previous play. See that by any chance? It would have been on the Falcons. I didn't see it. But all right. Hey, Schaefer, what am I promoting tonight? What do you want me to promote? Let's go. You can hop on. What do you want to promote today? Tell the people about.
Newsletter?
Sure, the newsletter. Chris Towers writes an awesome newsletter. It really is. Great injury news, a lot of cool stats and cool notes. Just go to cbsports.com/newsletters. And we have a bunch of them. But check out the Fantasy Football Today newsletter, of course. Sent right to your inbox. And it's all for free, obviously. And it's great fantasy content. All right, the big news. We got a lot of big news. First, quarterback news. Matt Rule, they didn't go with P.J. Walker as a change. They just did it because it was garbage time. But I guess he didn't exactly confirm that Baker Mayfield would be starting next week.
No, he did not. After the game, he was giving the standard coach speak line of just being focused on the game that just happened and not looking ahead. That included when the reporters started asking about his job and whether or not he would still be the coach of the Panthers next week.
Eddie Bridgewater left after one pass attempt with elbow and head injuries, and he actually did clear the old concussion protocol, but after what happened with Tua 2 weeks ago, they've changed the concussion protocol, and he was not allowed to come back in. So they had their third-string quarterback for almost the entire game, and they lost at the Jets, and the Jets are 3-2. Dolphins have Minnesota next week. Damian Harris left with a hamstring injury, as Dave previously alluded to. And then here's a big one. Rashad Penny, man, what a shame. He broke his tibia, and that was in the third quarter. Ken Walker came in and had one really long touchdown run. Obviously, if he's available, Ken Walker, he's 68% rostered, so he's available.
Right.
Is he the biggest priority right now?
Believe it or not, Kenneth Walker is a top 15 running back without Rashad Penny.
I'm going to believe that next week against Arizona. I'm going to believe it the week after that against the Chargers. I'm probably going to believe it the week after that against the Giants. They play Arizona after that. What a stretch coming up here. Next 4 games for Ken Walker.
Yeah, I will say this, right? Like Penny, if you just look at Penny's games so far, his PPR fantasy points were 8.7, 1.5, 7.9, and 28.7. And then obviously he left this game early. They throw almost no passes to the running backs in this offense, right? They don't really get that many carries. I mean, Penny's had 12, 6, 14, and 17 carries in his 4 healthy games. I think they combined today, the two of them combined for 16 carries. So I don't know. Is he better than Rashad Penny was? Because it's not like Ken Walker was taking a ton from Rashad Penny, and Penny was not a top 15 running back.
I think that they may already trust him more catching passes than they did Rashad Penny. I think there is more potential for a 3 to 4 catch game along with 15 carries for Walker. And I don't think he's any worse than Rashad Penny.
Okay. But I wouldn't count on I don't think he's worse than Rashad Penny either. I think he's a pretty talented running back. I wouldn't count on that target share to be a week in, week out thing. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if 2 of the next 4 games he didn't even have a catch. DJ Dallas played more 3rd and 4th downs after Penny got hurt. 3 of them, 3 of 4 that they had. Walker obviously only played 1. So I think that you've got to look at Walker as someone who could perform, maybe be a little bit more fit. It's hard to say he could be more efficient than Rashad Penny.
Yeah, I don't think that's fair to Penny. And Penny's really
No, I don't think it is either. But I think he can do well with the workload.
And look, they're
And
offense
this is.
is a
I
lot
think it's a
better
good
than the
offense.
Yeah, it's a
I
lot
think it's
better.
a good offense. Yeah.
By the way, I just saw a report Baker Mayfield's in a walking boot right now. So another thing to keep an eye on.
That's too bad.
All right, James Conner, Darrell Williams, and Jonathan Ward all left with injuries. So, Benjamin, is he the number 2 waiver priority?
Yeah.
I don't think Benjamin's good, but I will say the last 2 weeks, when they have given the ball to Benjamin, the ball has moved faster forward than when they've given it to James Conner.
They have Seattle next week, which is a great matchup. So
Right.
that could be a backup running. It could be Ken Walker versus Benjamin, but we don't know the severity of any of the injuries right now.
We don't know the severity of any of them. And if all 3 of them are somehow out, then look for Keontae Ingram, their rookie running back, to maybe get some chances. But Eno should be the leader of that offense. Well, I mean, Kyler throwing the ball is the leader of that offense. That's what they'll go with. But
Right.
Eno
But
didn't look
he
bad
throws it
when
to
he
Eno
played.
sometimes.
He does. Eno's a very good pass catcher.
And Dave, you can make your Uno jokes. Let's see. Some other notes here. Tevin Coleman was pretty involved for the 49ers as a third down back, scored a late touchdown in a blowout.
He
Tyreek
scored
Hill.
an early touchdown, too.
He caught the touchdown.
Tevin Coleman had a 2-touchdown day.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill left with a foot injury in the fourth quarter. Chris Olave left with a concussion on a touchdown catch. It was a really wacky play. Nelson Aguilar left with a hamstring injury. Dalton Schultz left but came back, and he has now had 2 straight games with 0 catches. They threw for 102 yards in a win at the Rams today, the Dallas Cowboys. Pat Freiermuth left with a concussion. So typical Sunday, a lot of big injuries and disappointing, obviously, but we'll get through it. And a lot of the times these guys come back and don't miss any time, so we'll keep our fingers crossed for guys like Damian Harris and James Conner and Chris Olave, etc. All right, time for the super studs and the mega duds of fantasy week 3. What is with me? I have said week 3 so many times today. I'm sorry. Fantasy week 5.
Does
All
it
right.
feel like it's week 3 to you? And maybe that's why you're.
I just remembered I picked up Benjamin in a league late last night. I was just making some last-second roster turnover moves, getting rid of all of my Kadarius Toney and Wan'Dale Robinsons for the week.
Me too.
And then this morning, I dropped Benjamin to pick up Khalil Shakir.
Hey, it was a good move for today.
I don't know.
Did you start Shakir?
No.
Hips don't lie. Yeah, I added Darrell Williams in 2 leagues today, and we'll see if that makes any difference. But this is what I'm talking about, people. Go through your lineups on Sunday morning. Go to the most rostered page. If you're on CBS, go to the most rostered, sort by free agent, all positions, and you can find a player that you'd never see in the projections that might have some value, and you drop Kadarius Toney. Although Kadarius Toney, by the way, might go on IR, so there's a reason to maybe to.
We a new game that I started today. I'm going to carry forth because you do this on Sunday morning, like after we do, or around the time that we do our FFT and 5. And so on the set, I was reading off not who you dropped or what leagues, just the names of the players that you had made transactions on this morning, and it was a hilarious list.
It was 3 kickers. I think I picked up 3 kickers this morning because my kickers were injured, and a couple of Darrell Williams, and I started Richie James, so that worked out great. All right,
I think there was a quarterback in there, maybe a bad quarterback in there as well.
that I added or dropped.
Yes,
I dropped Teddy Bridgewater for Richie James. Gabe Davis.
Pretty good.
Yeah, 171 yards, 2 touchdowns on 3 catches. He had a 98-yard touchdown catch and a 62-yard touchdown catch. Gabe Davis was started in 64% of leagues. Taysom Hill was a super stud. He and Gabe Davis are tied with 35 PPR fantasy points to lead the way, along with no, I'm sorry. It was Austin Eckler, Leonard Fournette, and Taysom Hill. Gabe Davis is slightly behind. Eckler, great game. Fournette, great game, 10 catches. Tyler Lockett, another big one. That is 3 straight games with 76 or more yards. No, 4 straight games with 76 or more yards, pardon me. And he had 2 touchdowns and 104 yards today, Tyler Lockett, and then Breece Hall. All right, so the names I got here for the super studs are Gabe Davis, Taysom Hill, Austin Eckler, Leonard Fournette, Tyler Lockett, Breece Hall. What's interesting in there to you, Dave?
Well, I think it's great that Breece Hall is the main guy now for the Jets. And this is in a game where he lost some significant touches to significant high value touches is probably the best way to say it. Not necessarily significant touches to Michael Carter, but he looked great. Played almost 70% of the snaps. I'm good with calling Breece Hall a must start from here on.
But buy high on Breece Hall. He was tackled at the 1 after long catches on 2 different plays. And then they gave the ball to Michael Carter at the 1 yard line after those long plays.
Yeah, it was
Zach Wilson and Breece Hall could have both had monster days if it hadn't been for those 2 plays.
Yeah, and it was the only snap inside the 10 that Breece Hall didn't play.
Those 2.
Yeah. And he's so good.
No, he played those. He played those. They were both in the backfield, and he went the opposite direction. They handed it to Carter going that direction.
He played 5 of 6, according to True Media.
I think he was in for both of Carter's touchdowns, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was the play before. I think Carter had 2 tries at the 1, if I recall, on the first one, and maybe Breece Hall wasn't in on the first. Then he came in on the second, and Carter scored. But yeah, either way, Carter did have 2 1-yard touchdowns. Breece Hall had an incredible game with, look, he only had 2 catches, but they went for 100
He had a crazy
terrifically talented
79-yard catch and run, but that's just another example of what he can do when they give him the ball. So I think they're going to keep giving him the ball. 20 touches today.
Are we just buying Metcalf and Lockett? Are they just must-start guys?
I was buying them last week.
Yeah, I give you credit, Dave. I really have had a lot of doubts about Geno Smith. I still don't know where this is going, but can't take away from how well he's playing.
Believe it or not.
Want me to read their schedule again?
Believe it or not, Geno Smith is a top 12 quarterback rest of season.
He will be one for me next week.
Rest of season.
Rest of season.
Yes.
Yeah.
Buying it.
I'll say no, but it doesn't really matter, right? You don't need to care about him rest of season, I feel. You need to care about him right now. Your fantasy team should not hinge on the success of Geno Smith rest of season, right? I mean, does that make sense?
No, I think it's more of a question of, because, listen, the Saints defense we thought was pretty good. There was plenty of reason to doubt this Seahawks offense against the Saints. Are we just saying the Seahawks are good enough that we don't care who they're playing, we're starting them?
I think their offense is good enough to compete against pretty much everybody that they've got left. How many more games do they've got? 1 against San Francisco, 2 against LA, but one of the games against LA is in week 18.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well,
I like a lot of what's coming. So yes, I will say it.
I think the only must starts are probably the wide receivers right now. You consider Walker in that group too.
I would consider Walker in that group.
Walker should be. Listen, I mean, I got to pump the brakes one time on Walker because he had that 69-yard touchdown run. But outside of that, it was not even 20 yards on his other 7 carries. He's a great talent. I loved him. Liked him better than Breece Hall as a prospect. But I guess I'm a little bit worried about him. I know I said that he'd be a top 15 guy.
Because you were a start Penny guy today.
I was
if he hadn't got hurt, that might have been right. But you think he's a great prospect? Like, he's as good a player as Penny. So you were starting Penny every week. Why wouldn't you
I always have to be a little bit skeptical when a guy has the majority of his production in a breakout game on one play. Mm-hmm. You want to see a little bit more. Like Breece Hall had a ton of great plays today for the Jets.
Yeah, he had a lot more touches. Walker had only 8, I think. Sure. I mean, the argument that I made was Penny has not been a must-start running back. He has not performed that way. So Walker better than that?
And when I liked him, I only liked him as a low-end number 2 running back. I had him in my top 24. I didn't think – look, I don't think – Heath, I don't think he would have had 142 total yards and a touchdown today if he had stayed healthy. But I think he would have been pretty good because I think this offense is pretty good in Seattle.
Guys, we got to talk about Gabe Davis. All right. Encourage, discourage. Like, let's go, Heath, because I know. And look, you're right. It's only 6 targets.
I didn't say any words. I didn't say any words at all.
You're right. He's only had 6 targets.
I just don't think there's anything. There's no. And I kind of said this for the first 3 weeks. Like, I wasn't any lower on Gabe Davis coming into this week than I was the week before, or the week before that, or really the week before that. But I'm not probably going to be significantly higher on Gabe Davis next week because of this game. This is what he is doing his best Tyler Lockett impersonation. Only Tyler Lockett's being consistent now. And he's going to get somewhere between 4 and 7 targets most weeks, probably 90% of the weeks. And that's going to be 2 for 13 some weeks. And apparently that's going to be 3 for 160 some weeks. I don't think it's probably going to be 3 for 160 very many times, but you don't want to miss those weeks. So you probably just start him.
He might be ranked 25th at wide receiver for me as long as he's healthy, which is then I'm capable of saying, or I'm able to say, he's a high-end number 3 / flex receiver who should be in your lineup.
What do you think, Jamie?
I don't know what you're talking about. Hi, boys.
Hey, Gabe
Hello,
Davis. Gabe Davis, we're talking about.
Oh, he's the best player in NFL.
Yeah, baby. Well, I will say that Tony Romo on
The
the
Steelers
broadcast,
every week without Isaiah McKenzie. It's great.
that'd be nice. On the broadcast, Tony Romo said that this was the healthiest he had been, and he said his ankle was better, so that's encouraging. Tony Romo said it was like he had seen him run better than he had all year, and he was healthier. So I did think
we had we get the benefit of our CBS personnel and Tom Spencer. You may have heard me reference this guy's name time and time again. He is in the booth with Jim Nantz and Tony Romo. He was on with us as he always is on Fantasy Football Today. So they're at the big game next week. They'll be at Chiefs and Bills. I'm sure Heath is excited for that one. And he said, expect probably Isaiah McKenzie to not play. He didn't want to officially say that, but that's kind of where they were trending. And that expect Gabe Davis to have a big game. And so, I think Tom kind of thought that they'd give him a few more targets. That wasn't necessarily the case, which I'm sure is Heath's argument against it. But you see what the upside is when he's getting some opportunities, especially down the field, and then when he's playing a defense like this. So fun to see Gabe Davis come through with a big performance.
All right, let's go over to our mega dud. Well, let me give you some rest of season stuff real quick on Gabe Davis. Who would you rather have rest of season, Gabe Davis or the Seahawks wide receivers?
The Seahawks guys.
Yeah, both the Seahawks.
Yes.
I think they're all in the same group. It's just the Seahawks guys are at the top of the group, and Gabe Davis is right behind them.
Gabe Davis or sorry.
No, it's just a really big group.
Gabe Davis or Alan Lazard and Jamal Williams. Alan Lazard or Gabe Davis.
Davis.
I'll take Lazard.
Man, I'd probably take Davis, but I don't.
All right.
I'm just glad I don't have both of them and have to decide between the two of them ever.
All right, let's take a break here. When we come back, we'll talk about the mega duds from Fantasy Week 3. No, Fantasy Week 5. This time I knew it. All right, we'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. Oh my gosh, Adam, Dave, Jamie, and Heath. The four of us talking Sunday night. Jamie, you got to join us more often. This is so fun.
Yeah, if the games end early in the afternoon, I'd love to.
I know, we got lucky with that. All right, the mega duds today. Jamie, why don't you talk about the Jaguars? I know obviously you were really excited about James Robinson, but he and Christian Kirk both lay eggs in this game. It just surprisingly they scored 6 points against the Houston Texans and lost. What did you think about that? The other mega dud I think we should talk about is Amon-Ra St. Brown. But Jamie, what do you think about Kirk and James Robinson going forward?
Looks like Jaguars just fell flat. Maybe just coming off the game last week against Philadelphia where they played in the rain back-to-back road games. They thought maybe they come home and they just kind of walk through the Texans. Give the Texans credit. They had a great game plan and shut down, the two best players for the Jaguars. Heath sort of alluded to this about the split last week between Travis Etienne and James Robinson. And maybe, they're seeing a little bit more out of Etienne, a little bit more explosiveness that they want to get him going. And he had the better day by far. For Kirk, I don't really know what to make of it, given the fact how much Trevor Lawrence spread the ball around. I don't know how much Darryl Stingley was on Christian Kirk, if that was a thing today, but, it could be something that the Texans used. But it just felt like the Jaguars offense as a whole was just awful all across the board. And Trevor Lawrence's problems from the rain carried over to some just bad decisions. He had a really bad end zone throw that was frustrating, but across the board just bad. That's it for me. I got to go.
All right. Got to go by. All right, Jamie. I'll kick you out. There he goes. All right. What about Christian Kirk? This is 2 bad games in a row. He did have 60 yards last week, but he had 8.3 PPR fantasy points, 2.1 PPR fantasy points today. Did we get too excited about the Jaguars, basically, and Christian Kirk included, Heath?
Probably a little bit, but I think Christian Kirk's still ahead of the DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett group. So I think he's still a number 2 wide receiver. I'm still planning on starting him next week. The reason I'm trying to be a little bit measured here is just because, like, 24 things happened today that nobody thought was going to happen.
Yeah, every Sunday.
And
right?
so, like, it's going to happen next Sunday as well.
Seriously. Happens every Sunday.
Right. And so I think this was just kind of a case of the Texans were winless, and I guess they've beat Jacksonville like 8 times in a row or something. So they beat Jacksonville every time, and Jacksonville beats Indianapolis every time. I'm just going to keep starting Christian Kirk.
Any concerns about Amon-Ra St. Brown, or are we fine going right back to him after the bye week?
Right back to him.
Assuming that he's healthy coming out of it, then it's a right back to him type deal.
Okay. Do you have his snap count from this week?
Sure, I can bring it up in a second.
All right, I think I might be able to get it before you. He only ran 16 routes. He played 20 snaps, so that was it. Josh Reynolds played 58 snaps, and Amon-Ra St. Brown played 20 snaps.
Yep.
That basically tells you everything you need to know, right?
Yep.
And that might tell you about Josh Reynolds too, because he had 95 yards today, something like that. Terrific game, 92 yards on 10 targets, 6 catches for Josh Reynolds. So that's 3 really good games in a row. Do you hold him through your bye week, or just think that, okay, once Amon-Ra St. Brown is healthy, presumably in 2 weeks, Josh Reynolds is not going to be a player we need?
But it's not just Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's also Jameson Williams. We don't know when he's going to get the chance to play, but if he meets his potential, then he will do damage to everybody in this offense, much less Josh Reynolds. So, look, I would prefer to hold on to Josh Reynolds and carry him through the bye, hoping that he can still be a solid contributor. But there's definitely some potential for him to be a dud.
I'm dropping him for probably the top 5 guys on the waiver wire this week. There will be some questionable guys, and I agree. If I can hold him, I will. But if I can get one of those top 5 guys, I'm dropping him.
All right,
Reynolds, if you want to talk, there's another really big mega dud on the Lions. I mean, all the Lions are mega duds, but Hawkinson going from what he did last week to what he did this week.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a reality check for Jacksonville, who I thought would win easily, and for the Lions, who they have a bad record, but they had the number 1 offense in football, and they got shut out.
We didn't believe that, though.
No, but I thought they had a pretty good offense. I thought top 15 offense.
I thought they'd be able to score more than 0.
Yeah,
I thought the Lions and the Seahawks would get exposed today, and it was only the Lions and the Jaguars instead of the Seahawks
and the Packers. Right?
I mean, that's kind of what the Packers have been all year.
Yeah, that's true. Pretty much nothing.
It's pretty bad offense,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, they'd make a lot of self-inflicted mistakes.
We are creeping closer to my dream. You remember my Giants prophecy?
Your prophecy did not include them beating the Packers.
It included them getting to 6-2, you getting excited about them as a playoff team, and them losing 6 of their final 7 and missing the playoffs.
I got news for you, buddy.
8 of their final 9 or whatever.
After today, it's not really going to take to get to 6-2.
You're in.
I'm close. I'm pretty close. It was amazing. And I said this on the live stream this morning, but they get the Eagles in week 18, and there's a pretty decent chance the Eagles have nothing to play for. So, that could help too.
And that division's got a history of teams letting teams into the playoffs.
The Eagles, for sure. That team has 3 4-1 or better squads. That division. That's amazing.
Best division in football, like we all said back in July.
Of course. And it's Eagles-Cowboys next week, right? Is that the game?
Yes. They play next week.
Wish Dak would come back for that. But I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, you can't take Cooper Rush off the field right now.
Yes,
how many passes did he throw today? 15, 16? All right, news and notes. Nick Bosa left with an injury. He's on the 49ers, so, he left with an injury. David Bakhtiari, Green Bay left tackle, he was kind of in and out. They said it wasn't about his knee. I don't know what the deal was there. I'm sure we'll be able to read about it. Christian Watson left with an injury. There were a lot of great cornerbacks who left today's game hurt. Carlton Davis for the Bucs, Denzel Ward for the Browns, Adoree Jackson for the Giants, Marshawn Lattimore for the Saints, Emmanuel Mosley. Is that what they say? ACL?
Yeah, Mosley's done for the year.
Oh, terrible. And Jimmy Ward, their safety for the Niners, he left with a hand injury in the first quarter. I don't know if he was able to come back, but gosh, the 49ers, I don't understand. But Mosley out for the year. But Lattimore, Dory Jackson, Denzel Ward, Carlton Davis, all left with injuries. Let's get our winners and losers here. Then we'll recap every game. For Dave, the winners are Ramondre Stevenson, who we talked about, Geno Smith, and Raheem Mostert. Raheem Mostert only 80% rostered, only 20% started. Geno Smith only 55% rostered. Okay, Dave. Geno is going to be top 12 for you next week. You love his schedule. Anything else to say?
Not really. Just go and start Geno Smith and hope that he doesn't regress anytime soon.
Would you drop Jared Goff going into his bye for Geno Smith?
Yep.
Oh, for sure.
Would you drop Russell Wilson, who's now dealing with a lat injury, for Geno Smith?
If you don't want to be patient with Russell Wilson and you want to drop him, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, so
Same thing with Matthew Stafford, by the way.
We had the big Carson Wentz versus Russell Wilson fight 3 weeks ago. Adam, I need you to muster up some energy by the time we get to like Tuesday or Wednesday to fight for Russell Wilson's honor against Geno Smith.
How much can I use Russell Wilson's injury as an excuse now?
But you can decide that between now and Wednesday, but I'm going to need more than that.
Okay. Yeah, I can't really defend him, but I think it could be a valid excuse. You know, he hurt himself in week 4, played all of week 5 on a short week, hurt. It could be a valid excuse. Raheem Mostert. Maybe he is the guy.
Yeah. He is definitely the guy. 68% of the snaps, 7 of 13 on 3rd and 4th down, both of their snaps inside the 10. Right now, the Dolphins offense does not look like the Dolphins offense. They had their 3rd string quarterback after their 2nd string quarterback got hurt. Once everybody's back, and if Mostert is still standing, then I think he's a use him while you got him, low end fantasy starting running back.
All right. So
and one more thing. Myles Gaskin played more snaps than Chase Edmonds today.
Pretty sure that was all garbage or almost all garbage time. Most of his touches, at least,
you might be right.
Yeah, it's unbelievable that they were in garbage time at the Jets, but not when you consider they were on their 3rd string quarterback. We're going to get to Heath's winners. Heath stepped out for just a second. I don't know where he went. So
I know he's got some stuff going on. Mostert started playing when it was 19-14.
Gaskin?
In the early 3rd quarter. Gaskin. I'm sorry. And then he didn't come back in until mid 4th quarter when it was 33-17. So yes, you are right. The majority of those snaps came in garbage time.
All right. So Heath's winners, I'll let you talk about them and we can, Devontae Smith and Darius Slayton and Josh Kelly. Well, Devontae Smith goes for 87 yards. Once again, the supposed number 1 guy, not so great against the Cardinals, and the supposed number 2 guy with a big game. But it's Devontae Smith, Darius Slayton, and Josh Kelly. Go ahead, Dave. Talk about
at least 15 I don't mind these. At least 15 PPR points for Devontae Smith in 3 of his past 4 games. The only game he didn't do it in was that slop fest against Jacksonville, which I believe he didn't play the full game in. I think he had an injury. He's making amazing plays. This is another receiver that I would put ahead of Gabriel Davis. I think he can be more consistent over the remainder of the season.
Heath, can Devontae Smith be consistent? Because here are his yards in 5 games: 0, 80, 169, 17, and 87.
That doesn't sound consistent. I have always been a very skeptical that past consistency produced future consistency in most cases. So I would agree with Dave. I would put Devonta Smith towards the Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, maybe just ahead of those guys, which is just ahead of Gabe. We're just doing a whole wide receiver rankings rest of the season on this show.
Darius Slayton, 6 catches, 79 yards on 7 targets against the Packers. Josh Kelly was the backup running back, the number 2 running back for the Chargers today, and had a touchdown, 10 carries, 2 catches. They had a pretty big day. Yeah. Talk about these 2 guys.
I think with Kelly in particular, like I've been skeptical of him early in his career, and he's been really, really bad. He looked really pretty good, and it wasn't the first time that I thought that this year. So I do think that he can play that 1B role to Austin Eckler, maybe be a deep flex occasionally during the bye weeks. But then if something happens to Austin Eckler, I think Kelly is going to lead this backfield, so he needs to be rostered in more leagues. Slayton does as well. You're probably not starting him, but I don't think it's as simple as Wan'Dale Robinson, Kadarius Toney just has to get healthy, and then they are going to be the clear number 1 in this offense. It's been very clear. Like, it took Darius Slayton 4 injuries to get on the field. You've got to earn your way onto the field in Brian Dable's offense. And last time Kadarius Toney was able to play, he had not done that.
Okay. And losers for week 5. Same game. Romeo Dobbs. These are Heath's losers. Romeo Dobbs, James Robinson, and Devontae Parker. I can't believe Devontae Parker is 62% rostered. That really shocked me. That needs to change, right?
Well, yes, we saw that he is like Jacoby Myers' handcuff, essentially. He is the number 1 wide receiver if Jacoby Myers is not there, and he is the number 1 pass interference drawer if Jacoby Myers is playing. I think that's all that he did in this game. He might have drawn 2 of them, so that's good for the Patriots, but you don't get any fantasy points for it. I don't know that he needs to be rostered in half as many leagues as he is.
Jacoby Myers, by the way, is 57% rostered. What do you guys think about that porridge? Too little, just right, or too hot?
I think he's a must roster in PPR.
Right. What percentage of our leagues are full PPR? Because I think that's probably pretty close. And he should probably be rostered in half PPR too.
Was your sigh hating my porridge analogy?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay. I thought you were laughing at me. Romeo Dobbs, 90% rostered, 45% started, 3 catches for 29 yards on 5 targets against the Giants. What happened?
He did have a deep target, and like most of Aaron Rodgers' deep targets today, it was off target. Now, that might have been because the receivers were all running to the wrong place, and Aaron Rodgers was throwing it exactly where it was supposed to go. I'm not sure. But the fact that Randall Cobb dominated targets in this game, a week after it looked like Allen Lazard was the number 1, a week after it looked like Romeo Dobbs was the number 1, I'm excited about him. I don't want to drop him, but you can't start him with any confidence.
Well, think about the way we're looking at the rookie wide receivers right now compared to a few weeks ago. With Garrett Wilson, doesn't look like a guy you can start. Drake London, less exciting right now. Olave surging. Dotson injured
in the concussion protocol.
He's in the concussion protocol. Dotson injured. Who am I missing here?
Treylon Burks on IR.
Treylon Burks on IR. So anyone else?
George Pickens is emerging.
Pickens, yeah.
Yes.
But is Romeo Dobbs a cautionary tale on George Pickens?
They all are. It's going to be hard to find
Yeah.
consistency among rookie wide receivers. They go up and down like crazy. We were going nuts over Garrett Wilson a couple of weeks ago. What's he done since?
The cautionary tale is getting excited about anyone doing anything good.
Because
Because next week they're going to do something terrible.
Well,
Except in Seattle, we can buy into that forever.
Yeah. And we could buy into Josh Allen. Dave's losers. Actually, real quick. Josh Allen, you're redrafting today. When are you taking him?
We had this conversation a couple of weeks ago on a Sunday night show. The reason why he would be more of a second, if not a first round pick, is because we know which players that we had high hopes for with our early round selections are duds now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think that he comes into my mind at second overall.
It's a round 2 pick, but I don't want it to sound like, and this may not be what Dave was doing. We were wrong for not taking any quarterbacks until round 4.
Oh, they were going in round 4. So, I mean, Josh Allen was
in our drafts, not in any real drafts.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
We should have been taking Josh Allen. We would have all had better teams if we'd taken Josh Allen at the 2-3 turn.
Yeah, my best team is my one team that has Josh Allen. It's a dynasty team.
Partially because all the guys who we liked at the 2-3 turn suck.
I mean, there's definitely some of that. But like the funniest story I have is that I draft in a league, 14 teams, analysts from every site. I took Josh Allen in early round 6. It's just preposterous that everybody passed on him and didn't want any quarterbacks, and they just waited and waited and waited. And I couldn't wait anymore. Round 6 for Josh Allen. My team's 4-1.
You know who I think might be joining the elites as Brady again.
Which is another thing that we talked about on the show a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, because he got unlucky today. He did. Godwin and Evans both got tackled at the 1. One of those touchdowns did turn into a Leonard Fournette touchdown catch. But he could have had about a 28, 29-point day. Instead, I think it was 22. But, man, they're throwing a ton, and they look like an Arians Brady team, So that was...
Yeah, they're right back to where they were. And the reason why they weren't is because they weren't sure about the offensive line, and the receivers were beat up. All
right, Dave, I'm sorry. I want to get to your losers. They're really interesting here. It's A.J. Dillon. Devin Singletary. Ugh, both were started in 47% of leagues.
Yeah.
And Brandon Ayuk.
Brandon Ayuk, is that what you called him?
Yeah.
I think I like that better than Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah. Well, I said AJ Dillon. Ugh. Devin Singletary. Ugh. Brandon Ayuk. Yeah.
But the Ayuk was good.
Thank you.
Look, with Dillon, I think it's the lowest percentage of snaps he played this year at 31%, and it's got to be the fewest touches that he had in the game. He had 6 carries. I don't think he had any targets, much less catches. So you're going to have a hard time feeling good about starting him outside of a bye-week replacement of running back. It's disappointing. We were hoping for better numbers and more consistent numbers from Dillon, but it kind of feels like this Packers offense has morphed into, leaning on Aaron Rodgers and letting him try and win games for them, which I kind of can't blame him for. The receivers last week, they were really good. Dobbs was good. Lazard was good. So I don't blame the coaching staff for leaning on Rodgers now that the receivers seem to be stepping up, but they took a step back this week. We'll see how they adjust to that for week 6 and beyond. The next loser was Devin Singletary. I mean, it sucks when the Bills score a bazillion points and Singletary isn't involved. He played a ton. He played 64% of the snaps. They only had 1 snap inside the 10 in the first 3 quarters. 64% of the snaps in the first 3 quarters. I didn't count the fourth quarter. It was a blowout. He didn't play anyway. He's going to have his games where he does well, but I almost think you look at him as a slightly better version of A.J. Dillon at this point.
I do think, and I don't know what the total number of offensive plays the Bills ran, or especially in the first 3 quarters, but when you throw a 98-yard touchdown pass and a 62-yard touchdown pass and the starters only play 3 quarters, it's really hard for the running back to have anything other than a terrible day.
Yeah. They only ran 54 plays. They only had the ball for 24 minutes, the Bills.
That's right, because they scored in 13 seconds from their own goal line.
But I will say that this was really Josh Allen went into the game pretty low. I think he was 22nd in air yards per pass attempt. And he finally started airing it out. Did that hurt Devin Singletary?
Yes. It's just that I don't think, and this is nothing, Mike Tomlin's one of the best coaches of our generation. I don't think any other teams will be as stubborn as the Steelers with their defense. Like, the Steelers have given up big plays in the passing game, and they just didn't take the big plays away.
Yeah. It was so windy. That was also very impressive by Josh Allen in those conditions to be airing it, slinging it like that. And that second catch, by the way, by Gabe Davis was
ridiculous.
Yeah,
stealing it away from Minkah Fitzpatrick. And Tony Romo's call was also really funny. I don't know if you heard it, but it's worth listening to. He was like, "I'm bigger than you." Brandon Ayuk, Dave, he actually led the team in receiving, but he's just not having a very good year. Is it time to drop Brandon Ayuk?
You could. It's unfortunate, but now the last 2 games, 4 targets for him in each of the 2 games. That's not something that fantasy managers can feel good about starting. And bye week replacement wide receiver, an offense that Kittle can't get going in either, unless you count 9.7 PPR points as getting going. I feel like Debo's good.
We do.
Okay.
Fumble.
Debo week in and week out, he's a must start. Whoever the lead running back, or we think is the lead running back for the 49ers, that guy's a must start too. I think Kittle is probably going to be in lineups more often than Ayuk moving forward.
Unfortunately for Kittle, he lost 2 points on the fumble, so he was only 7 point something this week. But at least they got him involved. They seemed pretty eager to get him involved.
6 targets.
All right, so let's go to the games. I thought that we would have a swift, quick show today, but I think I'm wrong about that. Let's go to the games. Giants 27, Packers 22. Hey.
Believe it or not, the NFC East is the best division. No. Believe it or not, Darius Slayton will be the Giants' #1 wide receiver for the next month.
Sure, I'll believe that. I just don't know if that means anything to my fantasy team outside of another bye week replacement receiver.
This is not someone you want to trust, but yeah, I do believe that. I mean, it's probably him or Wandale. Yeah. Okay. Believe it or not, Aaron Jones is going to be kind of disappointing this year. I'm not going to call him a bust, but
I got a tweet saying, when can we admit Aaron Jones is a bust? And I said, well, he came into this week RB10, so probably not yet.
He plays the Jets next week. The Commanders after that.
Yeah, but he
I
played
think-
the Giants this week. I mean,
I think he's
Yeah,
going to
whatever.
have. They're not using him in the passing game like we had hoped that they would, and that is disappointing. I still think he's going to have multiple 150-yard, 2-touchdown games in the future, and he's going to finish as a top 10 running back.
Yep, you got to take your lumps with him.
it's a weird offense. It's not good for
Good.
fantasy in the sense that they spread it out so much.
Well, it's not good, period, so far.
Not that bad of an offense, is it?
They've
I
scored
don't think it's that bad.
more than
They
two
were
offensive
bad late
touchdowns
today.
twice.
Well, they were horrible in week 1. I feel
They
like
had
they
14 points against Tampa Bay, and they scored 22 points against the Giants.
Yeah. It's not explosive. That's the big problem. All right, let's
And
go
Christian
to
Watson had a hamstring today, right?
Yes.
Minnesota 29, Chicago 22.
Believe it or not, David Montgomery is a must-start running back again.
Yep, I believe it.
12 carries, 20 yards.
I
and a
kind of
touchdown.
thought in watching this game, and I'll be interested to hear what you thought, Dave. I thought Justin Fields maybe found a couple things. He had a few more on-time throws, and when he does things right, man, he looks like a good quarterback.
He
Not very
does.
often, but when he does, he looks like it.
Montgomery played 72% of the snaps, played all 3 of their snaps inside the 10. He was taken off for the majority of 3rd and 4th down snaps, but he still played a decent amount of those. And if what you're saying about Fields is true, then that means that he's not getting benched. He's not going anywhere. He's going to start to be better. It'll change the dynamic of how teams play against Chicago. I like that Fields ran 8 times. And anytime you've got a running back with a rushing quarterback, there should be good efficiency. That was not the case today. Montgomery didn't even average 2 yards per carry. It was ugly. And you better be grateful for the 4 catches he had on 4 targets. But I think he can come through with better numbers. He's got the Commanders on a short week. I would expect him to have a very good game on Thursday.
Oh boy, I can't wait for that game. Okay, how about
If you thought last Thursday's game was a barn burner, just wait till this Thursday's game.
At least we don't have as good of defenses. I do,
True.
because they had a pretty decent chance. They were down inside the 40 before they lost that fumble on the final drive. Would have
Yeah.
loved to have seen them take some shots at the end zone.
Yeah, they had a chance to go 3-2.
No, they were still on their side of the field when they fumbled.
No, I don't think so. Were they?
Yeah.
All right. Adam Thielen is probably the only other interesting.
Or no, they had the play, and then if you're talking about, never mind. They were on the other side of the field after Fields completed it to the receiver.
He crossed midfield.
He crossed midfield.
So he fumbled
on the-
around the 40, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Going in. Yeah.
Adam Thielen, 4 catches, 27 yards on 7 targets. So now here are Thielen's yards in 5 games: 36, 52, a hike, 61, 72, 27, and he has 1 touchdown this year. But now 4 straight games with 7 or more targets. So he was started in 71% of leagues. I think you just have to kind of live with the ups and downs of Thielen, right? But what would you say about Adam Thielen after this?
I'd say you should live with the ups and downs with Adam Thielen.
He's below Gabe Davis on the wide receiver ladder.
Right, because he doesn't have as much upside from week to week as Gabe Davis does. They've got Miami this coming week. He could score on the Dolphins.
Okay. Tampa Bay and Atlanta. Tampa Bay 21, Atlanta 15, Heath.
Believe it or not, you should sit all Falcons in week 6.
Against the 49ers.
That's a believe.
Yep. Sit them all, even if Pitts comes back.
I would actually be curious to know if the Niners are staying on the East Coast because they were in Carolina today. And I mean, making 2.
They've done
straight-
that in the past.
I
Yeah.
assume they're going to stay, but it would be something to keep an eye on there. They just lost Mosley and they may have lost Bosa. So that's actually, it's actually a pretty big deal.
If they lost Bosa, that's significant, obviously. Might have to tweak it a little bit about sitting all Falcons no matter what.
Which one would you want to start?
London.
I guess London would be at the top of the list, but it would be in that flex range. Definitely behind Gabriel Davis.
They had another drive today where they just ran it like 10 times in a row. And they also scored a touchdown on this drive.
And, they kind of did it late in the game, and it was really weird. because they lost by 6 in this game, but they were down 21-0. So I thought, all right, this is exactly what I thought. They were going to get beat pretty bad. They'd have to throw a lot. They were down 21-0. They threw 25 passes. And they were just very nonchalant in the fourth quarter when they scored. It was a pretty long drive and they scored to make it 21-15. There was about 4.5 minutes left, I think.
And
they
yeah,
can't get out of there
for the stupid penalty that wasn't a penalty,
Right.
they would have had a chance to win the game.
Yeah, you're right. Give them credit. I think Arthur Smith does a nice job. Doesn't really get a lot of credit. That's just my take. So yeah, it was a disappointing split, I guess. It was 13 carries for Algier, 8 for Huntley, and neither of them caught a pass. And then Avery Williams scored the touchdown from 8 yards out. Weird. So what do we do with Drake London here, guys? Like, forget about week 6. Going forward, what do you think you have in London? A number 3, a number 2?
He's between Gabe Davis and Adam Thielen on the wide receiver ladder.
I think he's behind Thielen on the wide receiver ladder.
Okay.
He's on the rookie wide receiver seesaw.
You getting worried at all about
more sawing than seeing?
Chris Godwin? Are you worried about Chris Godwin at all?
He had the same number of he and Mike Evans had the same exact number of fantasy points today, right?
They did.
4 for 81 and 6 for 61. Yep.
12.1? No.
Godwin had over 10 PPR points in the first half. I think he had 1 catch in the second half.
Yep.
They've got the Steelers this week.
They had the Falcons this week.
I know, but the Steelers just got torched. Tom Brady will see that.
They had the Chiefs. They had the Chiefs last week, and Brady threw over 50 times, and Godwin had 7 catches for 59 yards. I'm not worried either, but it's not. I mean, he's had good situations, good matchups the last 2 weeks, and he hasn't come through really.
If you had him, would you trade him?
No, I think he's much more of a buy than a sell. And again, he came within a yard of a touchdown. All right. You could probably do worse than Kate Otten if Cameron Braid is out again. 6 catches for 43 yards on 7 targets. New England 29, Detroit 0.
Believe it or not, Amon-Ra St. Brown and DeAndre Swift are the only Lions that you must hold through the bye week.
We talked about this with Reynolds. I don't think you need to. He's not a must hold. I don't think Goff is a must hold. I kind of think Hawkinson's a must hold just because of the nature of that position. And I don't know if I'm ready to throw Jamal Williams back out there without the certainty.
Oh, yeah.
That DeAndre Swift.
What if Taysom Hill was on the waiver wire? Would you drop Hawkinson for Taysom Hill?
Sure, because you need to just. Yes, I would. Even in PPR.
And would you drop Jamal Williams for Eno Benjamin?
No.
Not unless he was literally my worst player on my bench and I needed a starting running back.
If James Conner has been.
Everybody else was still hurt in Arizona.
You know, I don't know how good Benjamin can do unless he is the only guy. Because listen, we went through this after week 2 when Conner got dinged up. It would have been a split between Benjamin and Darrell Williams. He didn't end up missing any time. And Darrell Williams was the one who played on 3rd down. That's why I would prefer Darrell Williams if they were both healthy. So, you know, if Williams and Ward and Conner are all out, then maybe. But Jamal Williams is a valuable player to have even if Swift is playing. He's still the goal line back.
Yep.
On the Patriots side, I don't really know if there's much to talk about that we haven't talked about. Jacoby Myers, 57% rostered at 111 yards. He now has 18 or more PPR fantasy points in 2 of 3 games. You got it. I mean, yeah. Would you rather have Jacoby Myers or George Pickens?
Pickens is more fun. I think there's probably more upside with Pickens. So I will say Pickens.
Okay.
All right. Jacoby Myers is the tortoise. Slow and steady wins the race.
Houston 13 and Jacksonville 6.
We talked about all of Jacksonville. Week 7 will be a Joe Boo game for Brandon Cooks against the Raiders.
Week 6 is a bye. That's why Heath went to week 7. So Cooks. All right, Dave. So week 7 is a Joe Boo week. That's a prove it week, or we're going to start sitting you for Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, I believe that. He's just been way too down. Way too down. How many single-digit PPR weeks does he have this year?
3.
Yeah.
9.2,
3 out of 5.
4.2, and 6.0. 3 out of 5. Only
Not
one game
so-
more than 50 yards.
Not great, Bob. Believe it or not, you have to hold Brandon Cooks through his bye week.
I think you do.
I wouldn't drop him. I guess
I agree. I would prefer to hold on to him, but
would you drop him for Jacoby Myers or Josh Reynolds, Brandon Cooks?
no. Would you drop him for Alec Pierce or Heath? You mentioned Darius Slayton as a possible number one receiver.
No.
Would you drop him? I mean, it would become interesting if you could drop him in a shallow league for Ken Walker. That I think would be, pretty justifiable because it would be a shallow league, right?
The one thing I'll say is that Davis Mills has not improved as a quarterback like some of us thought that he would. And they're not only are they spreading the ball around a little bit more than we thought, they're running the ball. They've got a running game. It's good. It's a good running game. So that's taking opportunities away from Cooks. I'm sorry. I think he is droppable. I don't think you have to. I don't want to, but he's a candidate to get dropped.
I think we also have to remember who we're talking about. And like that, there's a reason I've always been higher on him, I think, than Dave, because it does this. He has terrible games. He has single-digit games, and then he has 25-point games.
How many 25-point games does he have this year?
Well, you know the answer to that question.
I do.
Don't take it too
How many 16-point PPR games does he have this year?
I would assume he has one.
He has 215. Okay, if you lower the bar to 15,
he has two,
right? Okay, he has two.
He's got one with 15.2 and one with like 18, almost 19 PPR points.
All right, let's move on. Although, do you have any interest in Marvin Jones or Evan Ingram? Both of those guys with good games, and they are facing the Colts next week.
Ingram, maybe.
Ingram's on the stream list.
I got bad news. If the Giants do, in fact, have a good defense, the next three opponents for the Jaguars are the Colts, Giants, and Broncos. So that could be tough sledding.
That is tough on James Robinson.
Buffalo 38 and Pittsburgh 3.
Believe it or not, Khalil Shakir will be the third best Bills wide receiver rest of the season.
Bite your tongue. No,
you do a better believe it or not than that. Let's talk about the Steelers wide receivers, Heath. I'll give you another shot. A mulligan.
Answer the question.
I don't believe it.
The third wide receiver for the Bills, if you just get to use the third wide receiver each week, has been fantastic this year.
Agreed.
Good point. Unless Gabe Davis was the third wide receiver for some.
He was a couple of weeks. That's a good point. Believe it or not, George Pickens over Deontay Johnson.
I'm not there yet.
I'm not either.
But Pickens he makes a great play or two every game. And Pickett seems to know how he likes his passes thrown.
And he wasn't even a full-time player today.
No.
Pickens wasn't.
No, he wasn't. And Deontay had a ton of targets. The thing that you were hopeful for, Heath, was that Deontay Johnson would bounce back in target share. Absolutely did. 13 targets. Pickett threw it 52 times. It'll even out for Deontay Johnson, but will it even out to the point where he's getting over 15 PPR points per week?
I didn't see a lot of Kenny Pickett because, I watched Red Zone and they weren't in the red zone. But in that really stiff wind in his first career start against the Buffalo Bills, I know he threw 52 times, but throwing for 327 yards actually really shocked me. I thought he had a better chance going in to throw for less than 100 than more than 300.
It's still 6-something yards per attempt.
Yeah.
I know, but they're not good. So they're going to throw. They can't run the ball. So I was encouraged,
that's where we really have to talk.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Najee Harris. He was started in 73% of leagues. He had 36 total yards. He had 3 catches. Here are his PPR fantasy points in 5 games. 10.6, 13.9, 13.1. You're getting by. It's number 2 running back. Then 7.4 and 6.6. And it's just all year. He's just not running the ball well. And, I don't even know what to say. He's got 3 or fewer catches in 4 or 5 games. So, Najee Harris or James Robinson rest of season?
It's really tough for both of them. Do you take Najee just because he plays a little more?
Oh, man, I got to clip that.
Man.
Both their values are just sinking like a stone. Going back to the schedule, I don't know if I can say Najee because he's got the Bucks, the Dolphins, the Eagles, then a bye. Just the next 3 games are brutal for him. I know they're brutal for James Robinson, and Robinson is losing volume. Look, and every time I see Jalen Warren make a run, he's getting the job done. So I'm kind of afraid that Harris and Robinson could turn into the same guy, where they're splitting close to 50-50 each week, and you're hopeful that they plop into the end zone.
I put a note in my notes to cut out the Heath groan at 59 minutes and 15 seconds.
Okay.
But I spelled it Heath groin. So yeah,
clip my groin, please. That was not a groan. That was a dry heave.
A dry heave. Okay, fair enough.
You can also clip it where Heath says, "Clip my groin, please."
Los Angeles Chargers 30, Cleveland Browns 28. Brandon Staley, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? Goes for it in his own territory on 4th and 2, leading by 2 with a minute and 15 seconds left. I just
do you
stop.
know that the computers agree with them?
They don't agree with him.
Yeah.
The computers are broken. I don't know what to tell you. All right.
The computers were smart enough to let him lean on Austin Eckler on the ground, and he did that, and Eckler was amazing. And their whole run game is amazing. And the Browns had both their starting DNs back, too. So I'm kind of nervous about what this means for Cleveland. Maybe not as good of a run defense as we thought that they were.
They have Taven Bryan back. They're starting defensive tackle. Yes, they did.
Can we place Amari Cooper on the wide receiver ladder, please?
Ahead of Thielen. I think he might. Is he just behind Gabriel Davis? It might come down to who they're playing each week.
So you have Devontae Smith clearly ahead of Amari Cooper.
Yes.
Baseline, but they've been the same guy. They've got 3 great weeks, and the great weeks for Cooper have been better because he scored touchdowns. He's got 3 touchdowns. I think Smith has 1. And the bad weeks have been miserably bad for Cooper, but actually really for both of them. So why is Devontae Smith so much higher on the ladder than Amari Cooper?
Because one of Smith's bad weeks was week 1.
So
and maybe just things weren't quite figured out then, and the targets weren't great then. And the other bad week for Devontae Smith was rainy, and he got gimpy against Jacksonville.
When were Cooper's bad weeks?
There are road games, weeks 1 and 4.
Okay, so one of Cooper's was week 1 as well. That's what I thought.
Okay.
He's been
Fine.
great. 3 great games at home, 2 on the road, 2 bad games on the road.
Well, here come the Patriots to Cleveland this week. I'm not going to feel great about Cooper against New England.
Is New England's pass defense really one to be feared?
No, but if they've got one receiver to take away, I think that they can handle it.
Yeah, and I don't count him on St. Brown because he barely played.
Right.
I'm sure you
now,
don't.
does that mean that they were totally focused on Josh Reynolds? Or could you make the argument they were totally focused on TJ Hawkinson?
Couldn't tell you. David Njoku.
I was impressed.
This is 3 straight games with 73 or more yards. And
must start.
Would you rather have Njoku or Hawkinson rest of season?
I think you got to go with Njoku. I think he's going to be a little. I think what Hawkinson did 2 weeks ago shouldn't be expected ever again.
I don't think what he did today should be expected again.
Yeah, but usually he's right around 10 or 11, and Njoku's been better than that the last 3 weeks.
I'd probably slightly take Hawkinson, but they're back-to-back-ish. They're on the same rung of the ladder.
Are you concerned about Justin Herbert?
I don't think there's going to be this many games where.
Let's see when he gets Keenan Allen back.
Right.
He still has 3 games with more than 25 points, but he hasn't had a 30-point game yet. He's been close twice.
How many times?
16 or fewer.
How many times in the Brandon Staley era have the Chargers run the ball with running backs and fullbacks 29 times?
Yeah, not a lot. I mean, Eckler usually doesn't get 16 carries. That's a lot for him. That's a season high. And, how many times in the Brandon Staley era do they do something ridiculous and go for it on 4th down when they shouldn't? A lot. Jets 40, Dolphins 7. I'm sorry. It was so dumb. Jets 40, Dolphins 17.
The win probability was higher on going for it than punting.
Computers can Kiss it. Like, just kiss my butt.
If you simulated that game 10,000 times,
Ridiculous.
Side note, Adam Azer's employer uses computers and counts on people using computers and smartphones to connect with the company's content.
My employer would have punted. I guarantee it. What do we got for Jets-Dolphins?
oof. We talked enough about Breece Hall.
I think we're good on this
Believe
game.
it or not, you should sit all your Dolphins if Skylar Thompson's starting.
Maybe I'll accept Tyreek Hill, but Tyreek Hill got hurt late too.
Right. I'm not going to sit Tyreek Hill if he plays in a 3-receiver league, but it's going to be bad. Skylar Thompson, 33 passes for 166 yards. I got one. How about, believe it or not, you can drop Tyler Conklin?
Yes.
No, I don't think I would say. Like, this was obviously a really weird game for the Jets. I think they threw it 21 times and won by 23 points. They had those long plays. Like, this is not indicative of the way things are going to go for the Jets passing game, I don't believe.
Okay. He's about 68% rostered. All right. New Orleans 39, Seattle 32.
Hold on, just one quick sec on the Jets. They've got the Packers, the Broncos, the Patriots, and the Bills before their bye.
I do not think
How
they'll
many
have
of
any
those
more
games-
games where they'll run it more than they pass it.
Right. But I don't know how you can feel great about some of their options here. Like Elijah Moore, the guys who haven't really been delivering. Conklin hasn't really had a big game yet with Zach Wilson. I think you could probably drop those guys and not feel too bad about it.
All right. Saints and Seahawks. Let's talk about Kamara, because I think a lot of people had questions about him, and he did not score, but he had a terrific all-around game with
194 total yards. He did have a fumble.
Wow.
So
Go ahead, Heath. What
17
would you say about him?
I don't love the way that this all looks. I don't love the fact that, like, even after Taysom Hill scores a rushing touchdown, they have a 2-point conversion play and they hand it off to Mark Ingram to get the 2-yard conversion. I think he might have one of his worst touchdown seasons, but he's probably still a high-end number 2 running back if he gets this many touches.
And that's the thing. Like, I'm a little bit worried that he doesn't get this many touches.
Yeah. They had the ball for a ton. They had the ball for about 38 minutes in this game. So they ran a lot of plays, I assume. 37 minutes, 35 seconds. Seattle only ran 49 plays and scored 32 points.
Well, they only threw 24 passes too. Like, it was a heavy, 35 rush attempts?
For who? Which team?
The Saints, at least.
Oh,
way more.
23 for Kamara.
Over
9
40
for
rush
Ingram.
attempts.
Taysom Hill had 9. Yeah, over 40. Yeah. I think we spent a lot of time on the Seahawks, so we can go to our next game. Let me give you some Kamara ors. Kamara or...
The problem with all these is that no one's going to be in a situation where they've got to decide on
Well, I just want to know how you
Kamara
value
or somebody else for the rest of the year.
Kamara or Dameon Pierce rest of season.
Kamara.
I'll say Kamara too, but
I'm
I think a lot of that has to do with like name. Like, I'm thinking trade value. I think this has to do with name value, and that you would get more in a trade for Kamara.
I think Kamara will score more fantasy points than Dameon Pierce rest of the season.
Okay. How about Alvin Kamara or how about a wide receiver? Alvin Kamara or T. Higgins rest of season. I know T. Higgins is playing right now, but
Higgins.
all right. We got a lot of games left. Here we go. Let's go, Heath. 21-17, Tennessee over Washington.
I don't know what to do. Believe it or not, nobody has any idea what to do with any of the Commanders.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe the hell out of that.
De'Ami Brown.
Brown.
I know De'Ami Brown had the big game, 2 long touchdown catches, but I think that the Commanders are pretty damn matchup dependent in their passing game, and you're avoiding their running backs.
Things are going to thin out with their run game because Brian Robinson got his feet wet today. He played 28% of the snaps. That was only 5% less than Antonio Gibson. And McKissick led the way. Not only did McKissick, you'd expect McKissick to dominate 3rd and 4th downs. He also had all 3 of their snaps inside the 10. That might have, I don't know if that included them in hurry up late or late in the first half when those snaps happened. That might have been why McKissick was on the field. But I would imagine that Antonio Gibson is going to turn into a 0, and that we will eventually see McKissick and Robinson. This is assuming that Robinson's okay and that like he's functional at football, which I think we'll see against Chicago. I kind of like him against the Bears.
I was going to say he's going to have to be better than he was today to make Antonio Gibson a 0.
Are you keeping Robert Woods through the bye? 84% rostered. He had
No.
4 catches on 8 targets. No? Okay.
He's
got the Colts when he comes back. You might go back to him as a bye week replacement or number 3 receiver against Houston in week 8.
Next game, go to the 4 o'clocks. San Francisco 37, Carolina 15.
Believe it or not, Tevin Coleman could be a problem for Jeff Wilson.
Yes. I think the 49ers like to use multiple running backs every single week, and Coleman is someone that the coaching staff could trust for a little bit. I don't think he's particularly good.
Right.
I just think that they could use him as their number 2 running back from week to week.
I just don't know if Wilson's still getting 18 to 20 touches every week. I think he's still going to be a must-start running back. But
He will qualify as a number 2 running back.
Believe it or not, you should sell high on Deebo Samuel.
If you can. I mean, I don't know. He had 20 yards today, right?
Yeah, he's not doing nearly as much in the running game. He's catching touchdowns. He had such an incredible play on Monday night in week 4. But I think there are a lot of reasons why the concerns we had about Deebo. I mean, he's not having nearly as good of a year, but he is still scoring a lot. So I don't know.
If you could get top 5 wide receiver value, then yes, I would say yes.
But you're not going to be able to.
Is wide receiver 12 value? I don't think so.
How about Kamara or Deebo?
I could be talked into Kamara there.
I do
do like the schedule for San Francisco coming up. It's Atlanta. We already talked about that. Kansas City after that. The Rams, they play the Rams tight all the time. Chargers after that. And then Arizona again. Like their schedule is pretty good. I don't mind that for Deebo Samuel.
DJ Moore, drop him or keep him?
I'm keeping him. 9.9 was better than I expected against the 49ers.
Yeah. 8 targets. They are definitely trying to get him more involved. He had 8 targets. Baker Mayfield threw 36 passes. He had 11 targets the previous week. Some of them were tipped.
Should we see who PJ Walker threw to?
Shai Smith and Giovanni Ricci, and I'm not even sure. Moore was on the field for like the 4th down play. I'm not even sure he was on the field for the start of that drive.
All right, Dallas 22 and the Rams 9.
Believe it or not, the Rams are bad.
Rams scored 10.
My bad.
Believe it or not, the Rams are bad.
Oh, that's a big time believe.
And
Offensive line's struggling. Run game, no one can step up and be good.
Yeah.
Stafford has 1 receiver.
They definitely seem to want Cam Akers to take that job because Darrell Henderson did not have a carry.
Nope.
Akers had 13 for 33. Henderson had 4 catches. Akers didn't have any of those.
It's crazy. Henderson played more than Akers, and he was definitely their 3rd down guy. But it's. I think you're right. They want to try and get Akers going, but it's hard for him. He's not sudden, and the offensive line's getting worse. Last 2 weeks since that line's gotten worse, Akers has gotten worse. If they can make that line better, Akers might get better.
Believe it or not, Ben Skoranek is better than Allen Robinson.
Oh yes,
Could have put a lot of names there, and I would have believed it. I mean, there's just Robinson is still 76% rostered. I just
believe it or not, Chris Towers is better than Allen Robinson for fantasy.
All right, guys.
Production.
I understand the Cowboys are 4-1 with their backup quarterback, 4-0 with their backup quarterback, 4-1 overall. They're doing a great job. They have got to just like, please turn it over to Tony Pollard for God's sake, but it's not happening. Who would you rather have rest of season, Zeke or Pollard?
Pollard.
Same.
Could you imagine Ezekiel Elliott ripping off the touchdown run that Tony Pollard did? You can't. It will never happen. It will never happen. Tony Pollard is so much better. Give me a break.
What if Ezekiel Elliott played against 11 Allen Robinsons?
No.
Then I think he
wouldn't do
can break off that kind of.
He'd run into them and you'd knock them over and you had a nice 8-yard gain. And that's what he'd do. Philadelphia 20, Arizona 17, our last game. It was the game of the week. And they let us down at the end. It could have been such a brilliant finish.
Believe it or not, Kyler Murray is no longer a must-start quarterback, except next week because he's playing the Seahawks.
Well,
is he
back?
If you're calling him a matchup dependent quarterback, I think we're starting to get there with him. But remember, he's going to get Hopkins back. He's going to have a pretty good receiving core, and they cannot run the ball that well.
Why won't he run the ball?
Yeah,
because
something's
not
happened.
Confident in it.
Because the last drive, it was desperation time. Very first play, he takes off and runs for 10 or 15 yards. Later in the drive, they get into a pinch. He takes off and easily picks up 10 yards. They go 3 quarters, and that just doesn't happen at all.
Yeah, I don't know. He really wants to just like be a pocket passer, I guess. But by the way, he scored. I don't know if he ended up decimal scoring with more points than Jared Goff, but they basically are tied for the most points scored against the Eagles by a quarterback this year. So put that in perspective.
Right.
He didn't do that bad of a job.
I'm just asking questions.
Yeah, no, I mean, I say no. In the one league where I have Kyler Murray, I'm never looking at the waiver wire for a quarterback, and he's a late buy also, so not even considering benching him. All right,
Anything
anything else?
Rondale Moore's going to matter?
Dave, you think Rondale Moore is going to matter? 27%
No.
All right. Well, that's it, folks. That's our show.
The dog says that's it. We got to go.
Yip, yappy yap yap over there. We gotta run. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hope you get a big win in week 3 or week 5, whatever it is, for Dave and Heath Groin and Thomas. I'm Adam. Talk to you on Monday with Beyond the Box Score.